Earlier this week, Russian forces launched a massive strike on facilities in Kyiv-controlled territory. Targets included the Starokostyantiniv and Voznesensk airfields, as well as other military and industrial infrastructure. In Kyiv, the Artem plant, which produced electronics, instruments, and aircraft ammunition, was targeted. At least 6 missiles hit the manufacturing facility and severely damaged it. The AFU launched more than 40 UAVs at various Russian regions, most of which were intercepted by air defense systems. An oil depot was damaged in Kalachna-Donu, and substations were also attacked in Rostov and Volgograd regions. Later, the enemy launched several more drones at targets on Russian territory. Air defense operated in the Tambov, Moscow, and Bryansk regions. An industrial enterprise was hit in the Tula region. In the North Ukraine direction, the enemy is still building fortifications. Along the border, the exchange of strikes continues, and both sides are actively conducting reconnaissance. At the same time, the Russian armed forces managed to cause serious damage to the AFU. In the area, an Iskander missile hit an enemy convoy. The AFU suffered tangible losses in manpower and equipment. In the Slobozhanska direction, fighting continues in Vovchansk, where the enemy continues to counterattack. However, Russian troops are also advancing in the city. Assault groups have occupied about half of the aggregate plant. Meanwhile, the AFU attacks continued almost all week in the Lybok area. With losses in personnel and equipment, the AFU managed to push the Russian armed forces from the plantations west of the village. In Budi, an AFU echelon carrying armored vehicles and transport came under attack by an Iskander missile system. As a result of the arrival, several vehicles standing on the platform were destroyed. There is fighting along the entire line of contact in the Kupyansk-Svatov direction. In the area of Sinkivka, clashes are particularly heavy, and control over some forest belts is passing from one side to the other. In Serebryansky forestry, the enemy continues attempts to advance towards the mass grave. The AFU attacks are met with artillery fire and drone strikes. Positional battles are taking place in all parts of the Siversik direction. The Russian troops are consolidating in Rozdalivka after the capture of the village. At the same time, the AFU's dislocation sites in populated areas, including Siversik itself, are subjected to airstrikes. There is a relative calm in the Artemovsk direction after the capture of the Canal district in Chasiv Yar. Russian troops are reinforcing previously taken positions and building logistics on new frontiers, fighting on the flanks. There is fighting in the area of Druzhba on the Oleksandro-Kalinov direction. The enemy is actively counterattacking. The AFU cannot repel the Russian assault groups, but still have the opportunity to advance. On the southern flank, Russian troops are successfully advancing in New York and other settlements in the Toretsk agglomeration. The enemy is trying to stabilize the front by transferring reinforcements, but so far, it has not succeeded. In the Avdiivka direction, throughout the week, Russian assault groups have been advancing towards the Vovcha River. Several large enemy strongholds and populated areas came under the control of the Russian armed forces. Meanwhile, fighting continues in Karlivka, on the banks of the reservoir. The enemy is strengthening the heights and preparing for defense. In Krasnohorivka, Russian assault groups are advancing on the western and eastern outskirts of the town. In the South Donetsk direction, Russian troops are advancing to the northwest in the vicinity of the Ikriana Gully. Over the past week, several strongholds and forest belts came under the control of the Russian armed forces. In the Vremivka direction, the Russian armed forces have almost completely liberated Urozhain and are advancing north of Staromayorska. In parallel, artillery and airstrikes continue on the settlements in the Mokry Yali River basin. Northwest of Verbov, Russian assault groups have also advanced, taking control over several wooded areas. In the Robotine area, the situation remains the same, with positional fighting taking place. On the islands in the Dnipro Delta, small arms battles between groups of infantry continue. Neither side can claim full control of any of the islands due to their partial flooding. Several HIMARS MLRs were destroyed in the Klapaya area by an Iskander system strike. This demonstrates a qualitative increase in the reconnaissance and firing capabilities of the Russian forces.